We trusted them. That was our first mistake. Believed the Zalari were like us, proud, honorable, loyal. Together we stood against the Varric in the First Galactic War. We bled for their colonies, died protecting their starports. We even opened Earth's sacred vaults to fuel their fleets. But when the Varric turned the tide, storming through the sector, who abandoned us? The Zalari. Their ships left orbit mid-battle, no. Warning, no farewell, just gone. We watched our skies ignite with plasma and ash while their diplomats spun lies to the galactic media about a strategic repositioning. Tell that to the screaming civilians we couldn't save in time. Tell that to my squad vaporized on Nova 3, waiting for air support that never came. They didn't just betray us. They discarded us, sacrificing humanity to protect their pampered, silicon-fed empire. Did they think we'd forget? It's been 5 years. In silence and fury, we rebuilt. The Earth Council went dark, no comms, no broadcasts. The galaxy thought we'd vanished. Truth, we were preparing. United under one banner, the Black Flag Pact. Not diplomats, not peacekeepers. Predators, we learned from every war, every betrayal, studied their weaknesses, mapped their trade routes, intercepted their encrypted channels. We didn't just build ships, we built something more. Thinking weapons, adaptive armor, soldiers forged in pain, programmed for vengeance. They never saw us coming. Our first strike hit the Zari moon outposts. No warnings, no speeches, just detonations turning crystal domes into debris clouds. Their command centers screamed for reinforcements. We jammed their systems, hacked their feeds, left them shouting into the void. I was there that day. Grady Vaughn, once a captain, now a commander in the Harbinger Division. We don't wear ranks anymore, just scars and silence. I remember stepping onto that shattered base. The air was thin, red lights slicing through smoke. Zellery Officer Gold, silk draped over his trembling frame, begged for mercy. He claimed ignorance of Earth's betrayal. You didn't need to know, I told him. You just needed to act. Then I pulled the trigger. That became our creed. No speeches, no second chances. You helped or you didn't. You lived or you died. The pact spread like a shadow. Colony by colony, ship by ship, we took what was ours. Not conquest reclamation. Every power cell, every city, they were stolen from us first. Now the galaxy whispers about Earth like a ghost story. A noble species turned savage. But they forget, it wasn't always this way. We were loyal. They made us monsters. And now, we're coming for what's ours. Cycle 143. The day we burned the Zari. Central nexus of memory seared into my soul. The nexus wasn't just their capital, it was their pride. A fortress the size of a city, orbiting their homeworld like a monument to their arrogance, layered with defenses, powered by Earth-built Tekka, final insult, they never updated their systems. Too proud, too arrogant. Ghosts don't hack satellites, they thought. But we did. We slipped through blind spots, dead zones we remembered from the war inside. We hijacked their network. I led the breach squad, just 5 of us. Ordinary. Soldiers wouldn't have sufficed, but the pact had changed us. We were the gutted our humanity carved away, replaced with purpose. Breaking through the main vault, alarms blared in 12 dialects. Civilians ran. Guards panicked. Corn massive, iron-skinned. More beast than man set a charge that tore the vault apart like paper. Inside, rows of plasma-stabilized currency. Zalari Cetus was never about wealth, it was about memory. I stared into the eyes of a Zellary diplomat, dragging him from beneath shattered rubble. Glass sliced through his ornate blue robes, and his voice trembled as he begged for peace, for mercy. Peace. I spat, hauling him upright by the collar. Where was your peace when we pleaded for reinforcements at Hector 9? When Cinderline screamed for 12 hours straight and you silenced the relays? He tried to respond, but I shoved a datapad into his chest. On its screen played footage from that days, thousands of humans suffocating, crushed under debris, burning alive. Calls for help echoed unanswered. I let him go, watching him crawl back into the ash. He lived, scarred but alive. Some wounds aren't meant to bleed. They're meant to linger. By cycle 1050, we held sway over 30 Zalari worlds. Not through. Conquest. We cared nothing for borders. We struck, stripped them bare, and vanished. They called us the Shadow Plague Viruses, demons. The Galactic Council intervened, sending envoys and synthetic-trained mediators. They thought diplomacy could tame us. We returned their envoy in a pot alive, unharmed, but stripped of every synthetic part. Carved into the hull in 7 languages, "Do not speak peace to those you condemn to war." That's when they understood. This wasn't negotiation. It wasn't a request. We were taking what was ours. Then we found Project Virex, hidden beneath Varnix's surface, a moon they swore uninhabited. Another lie. We cracked it open and unearthed their labs, chambers, and stasis pods. Forbidden tech. Inside where humans are people. Soldiers reported missing in the First War. Zalari hadn't just abandoned them. They had taken them, experimented on them. They spliced our DNA with Varic biomatter, trying to create hybrid. Soldiers, perfect, obedient, enhanced, they failed. Hundreds died in the process. We revived the few who could be saved. What they told us broke whatever restraint we had left. My second in command, Dren, stood in silence for hours, the weight of it hollowing him. That night, we enacted Reckoning Protocol, no more mercy, no more subtlety. The Pact turned surgical, targeting their research labs, gene splicing facilities, and black site prisons. Not just to destroy them, but to broadcast every strike. It's made sure every Zellary citizen knew this was justice. They screamed across every channel, branding us war criminals and terrorists, calling it genocide. But here's what they won't admit. We learned these tactics from them. The silent screams, the weapons, the unrelenting campaigns. They perfected cruelty long before we did. We just applied it better. By the time we reached Zellari Prime, their fleets were gone. Orbital defenses failed under our hacks. Military leaders defected or took their own lives, landed without a helmet or mask. I wanted them to see my face. The Zellari High Council cowered in their marble chamber. Prime. Speaker, a withered figure wrapped in silks and shame, stepped forward. "Commander Vaughn," he began, voice faltering. "We regret stop." My voice cut through the room. I reached into my coat and tossed a blood-stained photograph onto the polished floor. It slid, coming to rest at his feet. Image still showed 3 figures, my wife, my daughter, my son, smiling in front of a cratered home on Nova 3. They died waiting for a rescue that never came. The room fell silent. "Regret doesn't mend bones," I said. "It doesn't unburn skin. It doesn't erase screams." I raised my weapon. Half the council flinched. "Your empire ends tonight," I told them. "You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to hide behind diplomacy and say you're sorry." Round data cores, trade agreements spanning 60 worlds' wealth beyond measure. We torched it all. And then I walked away. I didn't need to pull the trigger. That honor belonged to the gutted. Every man and woman in that chamber was judged and executed by survivors of their betrayal. I stood outside, their screams resonating through the walls like a symphony. This wasn't just a victory, it was a rewriting of the stars. The Pact endures not as a government, not as rulers, but as watchers, enforcers. Whenever a species dares whisper betrayal, we remind them, we are the consequence. Earth is no longer a mere blue dot on a galactic map. Earth is a warning, a scar in history that never fades, a shadow that never forgives. They didn't understand. This wasn't about closure. It was about ensuring that no one ever forgot what happens when Earth is betrayed. And we kept moving. The Pact spread like wildfire across a dry galaxy, and diplomacy had no place in our path. The Zellari hadn't acted alone. Others stood by as we fell, watching humanity suffer and choosing silence. The Rusari Confederation. The Almor Union. Galactic bureaucracies that feign neutrality. They didn't launch invasions or drop bombs. No, their betrayal was polite, insidious. They withdrew funding, froze accounts, blocked aid. let us bury millions. That made them complicit. We struck the floating city of Aresk with surgical plasma. Timed blasts collapsed their outer shields and shut down life support not instantly, but slow enough for them to feel every breath stolen, every ounce of warmth fading. Clean hands? No, their hands were steeped in our blood. We left them too, rot among the stars. Next came the Olmor. They were worse. They claimed to have offered aid after the betrayal, sent relief fleets, extended a hand. Lies. We found the proof ships loaded with supplies, rerouted to Zalari systems. Food and medicine meant for our people, stolen. We found human refugees. 2. Imprisoned on Olmor ships for security concerns. Children, elders, survivors. We freed them, then returned the favor. Brelin, the Olmor capital, was a fortress carved into icy caverns defended by mech towers and ion cannons. It took us 3 weeks not because it was hard, but because we wanted to savor it. I led the mission. My team breached the southern gate, eliminating their elite guards. We never targeted civilians. That wasn't our way. But the Olmor elite, their generals, their orchestrators of abandonment, they were no innocents. Standing in their central hall, flames devouring their crystal walls. I watched their once proud leaders kneel in ash. One of them, tall and skeletal, looked up with hollow eyes. "We did what we thought was right," he said. I laughed. "You stood by and watched us die." He said nothing. "Next time," I told him, pressing my weapon to his chest, "do the wrong thing. At least then you'll bleed for it." We didn't just win battles, we rewrote alliances. For centuries, Earth was dismissed as impulsive, fragile, primitive. Now, the galaxy bent the knee net out of belief in our cause, but out of fear. That suited us just fine. The Black Flag Pact became a legend, a curse. Mercenaries refused contracts against us. Pirate fleets avoided human freighters. Even the Varric, our old enemies, offered peace. We accepted. Strange, isn't it? The ones we fought as monsters were the only ones who never betrayed us. The Varric fought with honor, brutal but honest. No lies, no treachery, just war. I respected the gesture. The Varric emissary, a war-bred figure armored in flesh and steel, knelt before me amidst the ruins of Aresk. He offered his ancient blade a symbol of truce. "You," he said, voice crackling like distant thunder, "are what we always feared humans would become." I took the blade. "And you," I replied, "are what we became because no one else feared us." That sealed an alliance between Earth and the Varric. Unthinkable a decade ago. Now forged in shared hatred of the same cowards. But even as we carved our vengeance into the stars, I couldn't escape the ghosts. In the silence of my quarters aboard the Vigil, I'd watch old footage memories burned into data chips before Nova 3 fell. My daughter laughing in the snow, my wife teasing me about my beard, my son asking if I'd be home for his birthday. They never made it to the shelters. They trusted the system. They died believing someone would come. Sometimes I wonder if they'd recognize me now, if they'd understand what I became, or recoil in horror. Corin once said, "You're not the man who lost his family. You're the man who made the galaxy pay for it." Maybe that's true. Maybe that's all I am. Don't regret a moment. Every world we take, every leader we expose, every system we break, it all pulls us closer to justice, to memory, to balance. One last name remained on the list, the Tur Dominion, the whisperers in the Zellari's ears, the financiers of their betrayal. They hid behind corporate networks and legal shields, claiming to be mere investors. It was a lie. They had advised the Zellari to abandon Nova 3, orchestrated the war, funded the betrayal, even shaped the propaganda. At their head was a shadowy figure known only as the Spine. No one had seen his face. We found him in a fortress, orbiting a dying star. He thought he was untouchable. "He doesn't sink us," boarded. Only 2 walked out. Dren fell during the breach, vaporized by a plasma bolt. I carried his tags. Inside, Spine was exactly as I expected. A grotesque fusion of flesh and machine. suspended in a chamber of wires and blinking monitors. "You've come to kill me," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "No," I replied. "I've come to remind you." I played the footage of every atrocity, every human scream, every betrayal. Pixel by pixel, I made him watch. He didn't flinch. "You think vengeance makes you righteous?" he said. "No," I answered. "It makes us real." I left him alive. His systems stripped, his coordinates broadcast to every vengeful species in the quadrant. The last I heard, the Varric tore his chamber apart. We didn't need to deliver the final blow. We just opened the door. By the end, the stars were different. Maps redrawn, history rewritten. Earth was no longer a planet of dreamers or diplomats. We were executioners, and if anyone dared forget what they did to us, we'd be there in the silence between transmissions, the shadows behind negotiations. The nightmares of those who once turned away. We are Earth. We remember everything. We take everything they have. It was strange the quiet that followed. Empires dismantled, governments reduced to whispers. Enemies no longer built fleets. They hired lawyers, tried to buy their way out of reckoning, but we didn't respond to diplomacy. We didn't negotiate with hands that once held daggers. The galaxy understood. There were no second chances with Earth. Yet in the silence, a new enemy emerged. One without flags or ships. One that lived in the same darkness we had crawled from. Guilt. Vengeance is a flame. At first it warms you, keeps you alive when all else is cold. But the longer it burns, the less you feel, until you forget what it was like not to be on fire, and the pact had burned for a long time. I noticed it first in the rookie survivors of colony raids, children rescued from camps. They were sharp, angry, efficient, but some didn't sleep. They didn't eat unless ordered. They stared too long at scorched fields. After every raid, I saw the question in their eyes. What happens after? We never had an answer. We weren't building anything, just destroying, retaliating, one mission at a time. That worked when the enemy was clear, but the lines had blurred. There was a boy, Cray, just 17. He grew up watching the Pact reclaim human dignity, one world at a time, begged to join Harbinger Division, saying he wanted to see the galaxy fear Earth. I told him the truth. You won't see anything. Worth remembering? He didn't care. And he was good deadly, with a rail rifle, calm under pressure, fast on his feet. But after a mission on Delhi's Prime, I found him sitting alone in the aftermath, next to a wrecked market square. He wasn't crying, just still. There were bodies. Around and on combatants. Collateral damage. "What's bothering you?" I asked. He didn't look up. They screamed like we did. That line stayed with me because he was right. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped hearing the screams, stopped distinguishing between the guilty and the unlucky. I couldn't tell Cray it was okay that they deserved it, because I didn't believe it anymore. The next few missions, I started asking more questions. We intercepted a Rasari convoy rumored to be carrying anti-Pact weapons. The intel was shaky, unconfirmed, but we hit them anyway. Turned out they weren't armed. They were refugees, civilians fleeing the last ruins of the war, desperate to escape the purge. The Pact silenced the report, calling it a necessary mistake. That's when I knew we had crossed a line. Somewhere, somehow, we'd become the very thing we swore to punish. But stopping? That wasn't an option. Don't just put down a weapon after it's become part of your spine. So I kept going, kept obeying. But I started watching, not our enemies, our own leaders. Commandant Revik replaced the council after reckoning protocol. It wasn't like us. He hadn't lost family on Nova 3 or watched comrades rot in abandoned trenches. He came from old money Earth's elite. The kind of man who wields fire as a tool, not a wound. He wasn't in it for justice. He was in it for control. I confronted him once, in the middle of a war room briefing. I laid out the facts missions without intel, civilian casualties, silence on internal war crimes. He didn't flinch. "Do you want them to forget what they did to us, Vaughn?" "No," I said. "But I don't want us to forget what we are." His answer? "We're the monsters they made. Let them lie in the bed they built." After that, I was marked subtly at first, reassigned to outer patrols. Sent on missions with half the resources we needed, communications would mysteriously drop in the field. Once my squad's atmospheric seals were tampered with, if Corin hadn't double-checked, we'd have drifted into the void. The Pact didn't kill me outright, they knew better. Make me a martyr and the older divisions might rise up instead. They tried to make me irrelevant, a relic forgotten, but I didn't vanish. I went underground, using old channels and allies from the early days people who remembered what the Pact was supposed to be. We called ourselves the Cinder Circle, the last spark of the fire, trying to reignite its original purpose. We weren't overthrowing the Pact, we were trying to cleanse it. We exposed corruption, intercepted orders, leaked death counts. The galaxy needed to see Earth for what it had become, a rusted blade cracking under its own weight. The stakes rose quickly. One night, docked at a hidden base near Loris, I found a data spike in my Bunka Sleek device used by internal execution teams. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message. We see you. They didn't kill me. Not yet. I still had value. But I knew my time was running out, so I made a decision. The only way to fix this wasn't from the shadows, it was to take the fire back to the heart of the Pact. I called in every favor, reached out to old comrades who still believed in the truth. Some refused, some stayed silent. Waiting for this, we're going back to Earth, back to the core vaults, where the Pact began. If I have to burn every corrupted leader to give us back the soul we lost, so be it. Vengeance without restraint is tyranny. And we didn't crawl out of Nova 3 to become what killed us. We are Earth, we do not forget. And now, remember who we are. Getting back to Earth wasn't easy, and the planet was no longer the blue cradle of our childhoods. It had become a fortress, gun satellites in orbit, AI-controlled gates, clearance protocols for every breath of its atmosphere. They said it was for security, but we knew the truth. Earth was the Pact's crown, and they weren't about to let anyone close who could tarnish it. We didn't go through the gates. We went beneath them. Corin knew of a back door, a forgotten mining relay buried beneath the crust of Mars's third moon. It was how the earliest Black Flag operatives moved through the inner planets without attracting attention. We cracked open that tunnel like grave robbers disturbing a sealed tomb. The air reeked of stale oxygen and rot, but it got us close. We slipped onto Earth under ghost protocols, silent, untraceable. No official landing, no broadcast. Just the cold hum of stolen stealth rigs and the weight of what lay ahead. There were 9 of us left. The rest had fallen, vanished, or turned. I won't name them all, not out of disrespect, but out of protection. Some still have family in the outer rings, and if the Pact finds out they helped me, their bloodline won't survive the week. We landed in what had once been New Lisbon. The city had been rebuilt after the Varric invasion. Sleek towers, neon veins of light, and floating trams whispering silently through the night. But there were no people. The streets were empty, watched over by surveillance drones that tracked every breath. Curfews were enforced by synthetic enforcers, black chrome figures indistinguishable from the shadows. This wasn't Earth. This was a laboratory. Ravik had turned humanity's birthplace into a showroom, a polished monument to what order through fear could achieve. We moved fast, hopping rooftops, cutting through sewers, avoiding scanners. The target was buried in the Cascadian Mountains, Ashhold, or Fortress Vault, where the Pact stored not just its secrets, but its betrayals. Deep beneath, Ashold's reinforced layers lay mission logs, body counts, audio files, evidence that could shatter the regime. It was never meant to be accessed, not even by command. But we had a Coda 6-word phrase whispered to me by a dying Varric. Emissary, after we helped them dismantle the Tyrell network, burn the roots to heal Earth, we keyed it into a subterminal beneath a hydro pump station a mile outside Ashold's walls. The ground trembled. Doors slid open. For a moment, I thought we'd made it. Then they arrived. It wasn't a firestorm or soldiers. It was her, Commander Linaneris, my former protege. The last person I had ever trusted. She emerged from the vault corridor like a ghost. The mark of the pact stitched on her shoulder, a coiled black flag outlined in red. "Grady," she said, her voice unchanged. "You shouldn't be here." I stepped forward. "Neither should you." She looked tired, not just from the fight, but from the burden of pretending she wasn't dying inside every day. "You think this will fix it?" she asked. "Files. Truth. What matter? The galaxy doesn't want truth. It wants peace, no matter the cost." I didn't argue. Just said, "Then let them hear what peace really costs." She pulled a pistol. She didn't aim it, just held it as if it might make the choice easier. "I begged them," she whispered. "I begged them not to turn a shoal into a lie. But I couldn't stop it." "You don't stop the flood," I said. "You swim even. If it kills you." We stood in silence for a full minute. Then, finally, she lowered the pistol and stepped aside. That was the moment I knew. Not all of us were gone. Not all the loyalty was dead. We entered the vault. Rows upon rows of cryo-sealed black data boxes hummed with ancient whispers, each marked with a coda planet, a name. We cracked open the first 5 and downloaded everything. The raid on Cinderline. It happened despite official denial, with packed soldiers disguised as pirates. The destruction of Varick medical stations. Fabricated. We bombed them to steal genetic code. Each file was a bomb. But the last box, that one, almost broke me. Nova 3. I had always believed the pact abandoned us out of panic. Self-preservation, a tactical failure. Tactical. But the file told a different story. The pact told what would become the pact cut a deal. They pulled out of Nova 3 in exchange for a full Zalari strategic database. It wasn't betrayal in the chaos of war. It was a transaction. My family didn't die because of war. They died because Earth wanted leverage. The box slipped from my hands. I couldn't stop the shaking. Corin picked it up, silent. He didn't need to say anything. We knew what had to happen next. We transmitted the files, not through Blacknet or pirate channels. We hijacked the central broadcast line, the one Revic, used to address the galaxy on the day of the pact. Millions were watching. We gave them a show. We played the recordings, showed the logs, exposed the internal orders. And when it was all done, I appeared on screen, face worn, eyes unblinking. I spoke 4 words. We remember the silence. Then we cut the feed. Earth didn't erupt in fire. It erupted in truth. People didn't riot. They questioned. They doubted. And for the first time since Reckoning Protocol, someone whispered, maybe the black flag was drenched in too much red. Revic reacted instantly, declaring martial law and naming my crew and me enemies of unity. He tried to stop the flood, but it was too late. Truth doesn't vanish, festers in silence. And when you crack the shell, it spreads. We vanished again, not in defeat, but in strategy. The galaxy no longer just feared Earth, distrusted it, and from that fracture, we would burn it clean. The day after the Ashhold files leaked, the stars changed. Not physically, the sky still glittered as always, but in how people looked at them. For years, Earth had been the unshakable center of power, the vengeful gods risen from betrayal to bathe the galaxy in justified fire. Now, we were liars, opportunists, monsters with broken hearts. That hurt more than I expected, even after everything. I wanted to believe it all meant something, that the pain, the violence, the vengeance had a purpose. That it wasn't just rage wrapped in a flag, but now it all looked like theater. Even the survivors, those who bled with us, started asking questions. What really happened on Nova 3? Why? Did the Pact kill its own to secure power? What else had we lied about? The Pact didn't sit quietly. It roared back with every tool it had. Revic appeared on every holoscreen across controlled space. His face sharpened by artificial enhancement and scripted sincerity. The recent attack on Earth's core data systems, he began, was not an act of truth. It was an act of terrorism. He called us traitors, claimed the data was fabricated, said I was mentally unstable, a grieving soldier whose delusions had twisted into rebellion. He wasn't trying to convince everyone just enough. For a time it worked. Some colonies fell back in line. Smaller systems cut ties with us. Even old allies locked their ports, afraid of being dragged into what the media now called the Second Divide. But Revik made one mistake. He underestimated how far we'd already reached. The Cinder Circle wasn't just my crew anymore. It had spread quietly, patiently through field units, medical teams, communications officers, even into council ranks. We'd been planting roots for years. Revik hadn't noticed because he didn't believe we could build. He only knew how to. Burned so while he screamed on hollow screens. We acted in shadows. We sabotaged communications relays across the core belt, turning his propaganda feeds into static. We rerouted transport fleets, turning supply lines into ghost routes. We even hijacked an entire shipyard's AI, forcing it to produce zero-weapon humanitarian cruisers. No warships, not for at least 2 cycles. Then came the coup attempt. Not by us, by his own. Someone tipped him off. The hub went dark. Merrick was captured. And then the message came, and it nearly broke me. They executed Merrick on a live broadcast, not cleanly, not quickly. They made it slow, deliberate, a spectacle to send a message. Revik was done pretending to be the hero. Now he wanted the galaxy to see him for what he truly was. Corin and I watched the execution in silence, huddled in an abandoned observatory on Europa's mining district. When it ended, Corin's jaw tightened as he turned to me. "You ready to kill him yet?" he asked. "I was ready 10 years ago," I replied. But it wasn't that simple. Revik didn't travel without 100 guards, each brain-chipped and loyalty locked. His ships were black-coated, his fortress buried in a crater with anti-personnel. Shielding. Killing him wouldn't be enough. We needed something bigger. A symbol. Something that would show every world watching that the Black Flag Pact wasn't invincible. That Earth had bled itself dry, chasing vengeance. That humanity still had a soul buried beneath the armor and flames. So, we planned something no one would expect a trial. Not a bombing, not a raid. A public, formal trial. We'd capture Revik. Alive. Drag him into the light and prove him guilty. We wouldn't kill him. We'd let the galaxy watch as he crumbled under the weight of his own lies. It was insane. Every strategist called it suicide. Every ally thought it was a trap. But this wasn't about winning a war. It was about ending one. We launched the mission on Cycle 1203. The Cinder Circle infiltrated Revik's convoy en route to a supposed Unity Summit on Denvier 5. The summit didn't exist. It was a ruse, a private meeting for loyalist governors and military leaders to regroup after the backlash. We replaced his escort ships with our own, hacked the atmosphere seals on his private vessel, and lured him onto a secure bridge that funneled directly into our containment rig. It worked too well. Revik was bound, sedated, and transported to a hidden station above, Saturn's old mining ring. We broadcast the announcement galaxy-wide. Revik will stand trial for crimes against humanity, against the galaxy, against truth. The stars shook. Some systems called it justice. Others called it blasphemy, but no one could look away. The trial itself is a blur. I sat on the tribunal beside 2 Varick judges and an expected official who had defected during the Ashold leaks. The audience was digital, hundreds of millions watching from every corner of charted space. We replayed the files, confronting Revik with his own voice, his own orders. He never denied them. He didn't need to. He smiled through it all. "You think? Killing me changes anything," he sneered on the second day. "Dragging me in front of a camera doesn't erase what you've done." "I don't want redemption," I replied. "I want the next generation to know the difference between vengeance and justice." "You think they'll care?" "Not now. Maybe not for years. But one day someone will stand where I stood. They'll have a choice. And maybe, just maybe, they won't choose fire." That silenced him. On the 4th day, we passed judgment. Revik was guilty on every count. We didn't execute him. We exiled him to an old Varick penal world and shield, crawling with the same people he once condemned. Did no guards, no comfort. Just his name and the weight of his memory, It was more punishment than death could ever be, and Earth began to breathe again. The black flag still flies, but it's no longer a mark of rage. It's a warning not just to others, but to ourselves, to remember where we came from, what we became, and how close we came to losing everything that made us human. The trial ended, but it didn't feel finished. Revik was gone, swallowed by the world he helped poison. The files were exposed and the Pax mask had been torn away. But what lay beneath wasn't a revolution, it was rot. Systems that once pledged allegiance. 2 Earths went silent, some disconnected entirely. Others fractured, old governments clawing for power, warlords seizing territory, colonies scrambling to defend themselves. We hadn't just toppled a regime. We them the truth where it mattered. We built something new in the ashes of the old. Not perfect, not clean, but honest. The new council, fractured and imperfect, was at least trying to do better, trying to undo the silence and shadows that had consumed us all for so long. The Varric representatives spoke with an edge of reverence now. Their harsh tones softened. The Rosari found their voice, no longer whispering from behind bureaucratic veils. Even Earth, once a symbol of rage, had become something quieter, steadier, partner rather than a ruler. And yet, as I walked through New Earth Settlement 9, I felt like a relic. The children darted through the streets, their laughter rising like music in the cool evening air. Hover spheres glowed faintly as they passed between eager hands. Light from distant stars spilled over buildings made not for war, but for living. A Rosari child, its translucent skin shimmering, stopped to watch me. I nodded, and it giggled before chasing its human friend down the street. I'd never known a galaxy like this, a galaxy where children of every kind could play together without fear. Corin found me later, standing on the edge of the settlements. Garden. He handed me a steaming cup of synth coffee, as he always did, and leaned against the railing. "They're asking for you at the council chambers," he said. I sighed. "They'll be fine without me." "They're scared," he replied. "You may not want to lead, but they still look to you." I stared at the horizon, where the sun dipped low, casting the settlement in gold. "I spent too long tearing things down, Corin. I'm not sure I know how to build anymore." "That's why they need you," he said. "You know what not to build?" Later that night, I stood before the council. Representatives from 12 species, each speaking their truths, their fears, their hopes. I didn't address them as a commander or an enforcer. I spoke as a man who had seen too much and done too little to stop it. "We fought for survival," I said. "For justice. For revenge. We carried the weight of betrayal, and in doing so, we became what we hated. Now we have a choice. We can keep holding the knife, or we can put it down and remember what it was like before we ever picked it up." The room was silent, heavy with thought. It wasn't a speech that would change the stars overnight, but it was enough. Enough to remind them why we were here, why we had fought, and why we couldn't let that fight define us forever. The galaxy is still healing, still remembering. I often return to the Nova 3 Memorial. The wall of names stretches farther than it should, the steel catching the light of a rebuilt sun. My family's names are there, etched deep. I run my fingers over them, feeling the grooves, the weight of their absence. Corin stands with me sometimes. He doesn't speak, and neither do I. This silence, though it isn't the silence of betrayal, it's the silence of rest. The galaxy doesn't need to fear Earth anymore, but it does remember, and so do we, because memory is more powerful than fire. Memory builds bridges where flames once burned. It ensures that no one ever forgets why those bridges matter. We are Earth, and we remember everything that promise. The galaxy isn't perfect now, far from it. There are still whispers of corruption, disputes among species, and remnants of old grudges simmering under the surface. But it's quieter, softer. The wars have given way to negotiations, the betrayals. 2 fragile alliances, and Earth. Earth has become a memory more than a threat. Not the kind of memory that fades with time, but the kind that lingers, shaping the choices of those who come after. Somewhere out there, a child is learning about the black flag packed in a history lesson. They'll read about our victories and our failures. They'll study the battles and the aftermath. They might even hear about the trial of Revik and the files from Ashold. But what I hope they understand most is what came after the rebuilding, the healing, and the realization that vengeance alone can't shape a future. I don't leave my little corner of Greylight 3 often. Universe feels far away now, like a distant hum I used to know the words to. But that's okay. The galaxy doesn't need me anymore. Sometimes I still sit on my porch, watching the dual sunsets paint the sky in gold and crimson. I think of my family, my comrades, and the countless faces lost to war. The pain is still there, but it's quieter now. Like an old song I've learned to hum instead of wail. I don't know what will happen next. The future belongs to them now, the children who never knew the fire and the ones brave enough to rebuild from its ashes. As for me, I'll keep planting, keep walking, and keep writing those letters. Someday someone will find them. Maybe they'll understand, maybe they won't. But if they read just one truth in my words, I hope it's this. Fear can guide you, but it can never define you. We are Earth. We remember. And now we live.